It's the International Soccer Preview. We are Soccerphiles Canada. Welcome to Series 31, looking at the groups and teams of the 2025 African Cup. This episode is looking at Group D: Senegal, Congo DR, Benin and Botswana. Here we go! It's the International Soccer Preview by Soccerphiles Canada, Series 31. I'm Kevin.
And I'm Connor. And today we're looking at Group D for the 2025 African Cup Tournament. This group is made up of Senegal, Congo DR, Benin and Botswana.
Yeah, just a note on where we're at in our media casts. After previewing the preliminary stage for World Cup qualifying for the Asian region, we decided we were being too ambitious to attempt to preview qualifications for all regions. So now we're restricting ourselves to the tournaments themselves. Last summer, we previewed the groups, teams, and players for the 2025 CONCACAF Gold Cup.
Yeah, we also did a media cast introducing ourselves. It covers some of the priorities and quirks of what we do. It also has a quiz, which is still live, and winners will get a mention on a media cast covering the team of their choice.
Yeah, and after this African Cup, we will tackle the massive 48-team World Cup in the summer of 2026. So stay tuned for previews of that starting in the springtime of 2026.
That's right. Well, let's look at the three sections of this media cast in outline.
Yeah, in part one, we introduce the teams in the group and we give the location and population, some demographics for each of the countries.
Yeah, in part two, we'll do an overview of each team's history and recent form. This will look at both World Cup and African Cup histories with a focus on the African Cup.
Right. And then part three will be a comparison of the teams with each other in terms of ranking, head-to-head records, and prospects. And we'll end with a discussion of their prospects and our predictions.
All right. Well, I have a hook for you for this group.
Okay.
In this group, I found we have the clearest distinctions in FIFA World Rankings among the four teams. So the question to you, which we'll answer later, is: do you agree this group is basically decided already?
Good question. I agree, the clearest kind of stratification, but never would I agree that a group is basically decided. There's always room for upset. We'll maybe talk about some of the potential things we could see that could upset the apple cart. What's your answer to that question?
Yeah, I don't think things are as straightforward as they appear at first group. I think there's lots of ways this group could go, so I'm looking forward to talking about it.
Yeah, okay. Well, we'll talk about that more in our discussion, but let's jump into section one and take a look at each of these countries and teams.
All right, beginning with Senegal. So Senegal is a mid-sized country in the far west of Africa. Its capital city, Dakar, sits on a peninsula which is the furthest west point of mainland Africa. And Senegal also lies where the Sahara Desert transitions into tropical rainforest. The population of Senegal is 18 million. That puts it about the middle of all African countries, so mid-sized. And its nickname is the Lions of Teranga.
The Lions of Teranga. Okay, let's move to our second team, Congo DR.
So Congo DR is a large country. It's the second largest country in Africa, and it's located right in the middle of it. And it's a country that's bisected by the Congo River. It has a population of 105 million people. That's the fourth largest in Africa, so we're talking about a big country here. And their nickname is the Leopards.
Wow, that is much larger than in my head. Let's take a look at team number three, Benin.
So Benin is a small country with a small coastline on the Gulf of Guinea. It's a long, skinny country that's sandwiched between Togo and Nigeria. Its population of 14 million puts it 28th out of 55 African countries. So another mid-sized country, though a bit smaller than Senegal. Their nickname is the Squirrels. And I learned that the nickname comes from the analogy of a small nation aiming to climb high. So it's a good nickname. I like it.
Yeah, it is. That's cool that they are looking to climb high here in this cup. But number 4 is Botswana.
So Botswana is a large, primarily desert country in southern Africa, north of South Africa, and then bordered by Namibia to the north and west, and Zimbabwe to the east. It has a population of just 2.5 million. It's 44th out of 54 African countries. Might have said 55 earlier. So it's quite a small population, but actually every country below it in that ranking is much, much tinier in size. So it's kind of a big country with a relatively small population. And their nickname is the Zebras.
All right. Yeah, I'm looking at it on the map, and 2.5 million. And it is a pretty large country there, so that must be mostly desert, eh?
Yeah, I was quite surprised to find out its population is as small as it is. The other small countries are, Cape Verde and Sao Tome and Seychelles and countries like that. So Botswana, a bit of an outlier.
Yeah, mostly island countries there. Okay, well, let's look at those 4 in terms of relative size. So we got Senegal at 18 million.
That's correct.
And Benin at 14 million. They're fairly similar.
Yeah.
And then Congo, much, much bigger at 105 million. I think we'll have to make Senegal and Congo DR a bit smaller here to accommodate for that.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I can really make Congo the 8 times so bigger, but we'll just make it big there, nice and big. And Botswana much smaller by comparison. What did you say for Botswana?
Just 2.5 million. So your graphics there, Kev, make it easy to see that Congo is definitely the big fish in this group.
Yeah, but not so much in terms of strength of the team, which is what we'll get into moving on to section 2. We'll begin with the pot 1 team, which is Senegal. And we have the graphics here. This graphic I'm showing right now, if you're watching the YouTube, could be a bit kind of intimidating, but don't worry, we're going to do kind of close-ups of this. We're just using this for our overview. So section 1 for each team is an overview of their participation and achievements.
Great. Yeah, I'll start with Senegal's participation. So Senegal entered their first World Cup in 1966, but withdrew, joining the African-Asian boycott that year. So they participated in their first World Cup qualifying campaign in 1970. They did not enter the 1990 World Cup, but participated consistently otherwise. African Cup participation began earlier in 1965, and they took part in every edition except the 1980, which they did not enter.
All right. Well, in terms of achievement, Senegal reached their first World Cup in 2002, where they surpassed expectations, reaching the quarterfinals. They didn't reach the cup again, though, until 2018, where they fell at the group stage. And they have reached the most recent cups, the 2 most recent cups, and we'll see in the section on recent performances whether they pass the group stage again. Meanwhile, in African Cup history, they reached the cup on their first entry in 1965 and finished 4th place there and repeated that result in 1990. Their performances kind of ebbed and flowed, as we're going to see, with 3 periods of passing the group stage and 2 weak periods in between, often not reaching the cup in those dips. A peak in 2002 saw them finish 2nd, matching their good form in their World Cup appearance that year. And the recent peak was even more sustained, finishing 2nd in 2019 and winning their first title in 2021.
Just to comment there, the 2002 World Cup is probably the first one I clearly remember. And I remember Senegal in particular from that, knocking out France, who were the defending champions, in the Korea-Japan World Cup, and going as far as any African team had gone before. So Yeah, they always stand out in my mind for that achievement.
Yeah, what a shocking opener that was. That was a special cup for me too, because it was the only World Cup I attended. I was living in Korea, and so a lot of those games kind of stand out to me. I
Yeah.
think your dad also came over to watch, so we had a pretty good time. Okay, now we are zooming in a little bit on the World Cup, so we'll go into a bit more detail with a World Cup overview of Senegal.
Yeah, so Senegal was a very weak team in the early years. In their first 5 entries from 1970 to 86, they were knocked out at the first step. They dropped out of the competition in 1990 and seemed to return stronger with the good first round campaign, but they were no match for the stronger teams in the final round. In 1994, they returned to being knocked out in the first round of qualifying, despite being in the midst of a strong African Cup period. Thus, there was no foreshadowing, in World Cup play at least, the strength they showed in 2002. The performance began at that World Cup, as I mentioned, with the win over defending World Cup champions France, and ended with a draw against Uruguay. They tied Denmark, who won the group, but they advanced in second, leaving the husks of two giants in their wake. That's a great phrase. In the round of 16, they took Sweden to extra time and won. But when their quarterfinal game with Turkey also went to extra time, they were knocked out just 4 minutes in on a golden goal.
A golden goal. Yeah, what do you think of that rule? They've gotten rid of it, the golden goal, where if you score, the game ends.
Yeah, it had its moment around that time. Personally, I'm not a fan of it. I didn't mind the silver goal rule, where if there was a winner after the first period of extra time, they wouldn't play the second one. But no, I'm okay without it.
Okay, well, that was, as you say, a feature of the cup at that time. All right, let's continue going forward there.
Yeah, so 2006 qualification saw them finish 2 points behind a surprising Togo, and it would take until 2018 to reach the cup again. 2010, a particularly ghastly result. An undefeated qualification was followed by a promising start to the cup, beating Poland and tying Japan. But a loss to Colombia left them tied on all accounts with Japan's yellow cards, the deciding criteria, which landed them in third place, Japan advancing.
Right, so that was the 2018 World Cup, and we're going to save talk of the most recent cups until the kind of recent history section. So let's await that and move on to their African Cup history.
So Senegal took fourth place in their first entry in 1965, doing well to reach the 6-team tournament, and they reached the following edition, expanded to 8 teams. However, it would take 16 years and 8 failed campaigns to reach their next. 1986 saw them qualify, but they were knocked out at the group stage. 1990 was a surge in form that saw them pass the group stage 3 times in a row, finishing fourth in the first of those. But just as the tournament expanded to 16 teams in 1996, their form dipped, and they failed to qualify for that and the next cup. Another good wave followed, with 4 trips past the group stage in a row from 2000, including another 4th place finish and bettering that with a 2nd place finish in 2002. Another lull followed, 5 tournaments that saw them knocked out at the group stage and even failing to qualify in 2 of them. But an even bigger surge followed from 2017, matching their 2nd place finish in 2019, where they fell at the hands of Algeria in the final, but winning the title in 2021. Beating Egypt on penalties. We will see if the surge continued or once again lulled over the next 2 campaigns as we talk about their recent form.
Right. Okay, well, we're going to go back to our kind of graphic for the overall thing, and then just talk about a summary of their overall strength kind of through history. And there we go. Senegal overall is actually a 2nd-tier team, but really wavers between being a 1st-tier team and a 3rd-tier team. They've had 3 periods of strength, though only 2 of them reflected in their World Cup play. A good start in the African Cup was short, but perhaps counts as the first wave of strength in a pattern that subsides and then seems to come back even stronger. In that analogy, though, the lull was very long before it crested again in 1990. And like the 1960s, it doesn't have a parallel in World Cup performances. Neither of those periods can be regarded as top tier, but the surge around the year 2000 can. Passing the group stage of the World Cup was still very rare for an African team. And of course, beating out France and Uruguay was completely unexpected. Second and fourth place finishes over the period made them a powerhouse in Africa, but it was followed by an 8-year-long lull, which was more than just a dip in form, but a hard bottom, which saw them finish third in round one of two qualifying behind Gambia in one of the qualifications in that period. They crawled up from that by 2017 to another strong period, stronger arguably than the previous surge, although it is hard to outdo the glory of their 2002 World Cup success, where they came in with little hope and really achieved. All right, so think of waves in terms of Senegal's overall history. But in terms of recent history, they're looking quite strong, at least going into the recent period that we're going to talk about now. And that begins with their 2022 World Cup performance.
Yeah, they received a bye in round 1 of 3, effectively a preliminary round, but they put in an imperious performance, suffering only a draw in Togo, who were seeded 4th but finished 2nd, and that was after advancement was already assured. They won all games against Congo and Namibia to finish 1st in round 2 of 3. Round 3 of 3 was a replay of the recent African Cup final, and the result was the same, a win over Egypt on penalties. They lost their opening game of the 2022 World Cup tournament to the Netherlands, but they beat host Qatar and Ecuador to finish 2nd in the group stage. However, they lost to England 3-0 in the round of 16.
All right, so passing the group stage, would you consider that a pretty good result for them there?
I think so. Ecuador looked good in their first game. Qatar were the hosts. Not the easiest group. And then, they came up against a very, very strong team in England. So, I think a pretty good performance for them.
Great. Well, let's go to back to Africa and look at the 2023 African Cup there.
Yeah, so Senegal won their first 4 games in qualifying to secure advancement to the tournament. They seemed a bit careless about the rest of the campaign, which ended in draws away to 3rd place Benin and at home to last place Rwanda. But they nevertheless finished 1st in the group ahead of Mozambique. In the Cup, they were the only team to win all 3 games in the group stage, so they won their group. But they fell on penalties to a redeemed host, Ivory Coast, who scored a late penalty to push the game into extra time and penalties. So the defending champions, Senegal, bowed out at the round of 16.
Yeah, Ivory Coast coming off a terrible group stage there. So maybe Senegal took them a bit too lightly.
Yeah, I mean, a bit unlucky. I mean, they won their group so well. That should really get you an easy draw. And instead, they got paired with the tournament hosts, who they probably, the form would have suggested they should have won that game. But I'll add a bit unlucky because Ivory Coast, of course, surged all the way to the final, Senegal just being their first victims.
Yeah, they fired their manager after the group stage, so weren't looking very intimidating to that point. Okay, so that was not a great result for Senegal, but we move on to qualification for this cup, and how did they do in getting here?
So in qualifying, they started with a draw at home to Burkina Faso, but they were very consistent after that. In fact, winning all games, including winning in Burkina Faso, to comfortably take 1st place in the group stage.
Right on. Who do you think their top scorer would have been in this qualification?
I'd have to guess Sadio Mane.
Yeah, right. And actually tied with Habib Diarra there.
Yeah. They have a lot of good players, though, especially going forward as Myla Sarr, Nicholas Jackson. They look good.
Yeah, Ismail Assar looking very good in his club play right now. Let's look at the most recent campaign then, just finished a couple of weeks ago, the World Cup 2026 qualifying campaign.
Yeah, well, we've seen a couple of strong recent campaigns from Senegal, and this was another. They went undefeated in qualifying and finished first in their qualifying group. Interestingly, they were 2 points ahead of Congo DR, who they meet here. So that's kind of an interesting subplot. And they tied Congo DR at home, but won away. On the road, they tied Togo and Sudan, but again, finished first with a goal record of 22 scored and 3 against.
Yeah, well, this is going to come up in the discussion because I would say Congo DR was on their heels all the way, but in fact, Congo DR was leading most of the way until Senegal beat them in Congo DR, the two having tied in Senegal. So that sets up their game here quite well.
Yeah, Senegal won 2 of their first 5 games, tying the other 3, but then won their 5 remaining games. And I will note that of those 3 goals conceded, all of them were scored by Congo DR.
Oh wow, that is something. Yeah, that's true. I hadn't noticed that. Okay, well, give me your top scorers here.
I mean, I got to guess, Sadio Mane and maybe Nicholas Jackson as well.
Yeah, well, Sadio Mane got 5 of their 22 goals. Actually, in second place was the Tottenham player, Pape Matar Sarr.
Yeah, maybe not known for his goal scoring at club form, but yeah, they're a very strong team when you look at their
Yeah,
personnel.
yeah, so many, and they had a few other scorers in this tournament, kind of a bit more spread out. And I'm not sure whether you realise that Everton's Iliman Ndiaye is one of the Senegal players here.
Yeah, I did. I see he only got 1 of their qualifying goals, but he's been in sparkling form in the Premier League. So just another goal threat.
Yeah, yeah, they have so much talent. Okay, well, that is our look at Senegal, and we'll come back to them in the discussion and the comparison. But now we're going to move on to Congo DR and begin with a kind of a broad view of their participation and achievements.
Yeah, the first thing we'll sort out is their name. So Congo DR played as Congo Leopoldville, then Congo Kinshasa in the 1960s, Zaire from the 1970s to 1997, and then Congo DR thereafter. Their entry for the 1970 World Cup was not accepted, so they first entered World Cup qualifying in 1974. They withdrew in 1978 and did not enter in 1986, but they participated consistently since 1990. Their African Cup history began earlier in 1965. Here, too, they missed tournaments paralleling their World Cup record, not entering in 1978 and withdrawing in 1984, but not missing from 1986 onward.
All right. Well, in terms of achievement, Zaire reached the World Cup on their first entry in 1974. That was a period of strength for them, but it was under dictator Mobutu, and the success was much more evident in the African Cup, where they consistently qualified from 1965 to 1976 and won 2 titles over those 6 campaigns. They kind of fell apart shortly after that, but rose again in the 1990s with a strong 20-year period that peaked with a 3rd place finish in 1998. There was really no parallel to that period in their World Cup play, but in recent times, coming close to the World Cup twice aligns with another strong period that began in 2015 with another 2nd place finish in the African Cup. Okay, well, we just said that just the 1 World Cup appearance for them, but let's take a bit of a closer look at their history in the World Cup.
Yeah, so Congo Kinshasa, as they were known, was unable to capitalize on a strong team that had won the 1968 African Cup, as their 1970 application was not accepted, a result of being processed incorrectly or not on time. Now called Zaire, they did make good on it in 1974, though. in a solid qualification run where they won all games in a final round with Zambia and Morocco. And then winning their second African Cup in March before going into the Cup in June. That promising form, though, however, didn't come to pass as they lost all 3 games in the Cup. That was to Scotland, Yugoslavia, and Brazil, and suffering a humiliating 9-0 loss at the hands of Yugoslavia.
Ouch.
Yeah. The team fell apart after that under the harsh treatment of Matubu, and they only completed qualification for 1 of the following 3 cups. Despite reaching the final round of qualifying from 1998, Congo DR, as they were now known, did not come close again until 2006, where they finished second in the qualifying group, but still 5 points behind Ghana. It took until 2018 to reach the final round again, where they fell only 1 point behind Tunisia, who advanced. But we'll see how they fared in subsequent qualification runs in the recent history section.
Right, okay. So that's World Cup. In African Cup, we have alluded to some of their successes here, but let's put it all into place.
Yeah. So their first African Cup entry was 9 years earlier than their World Cup genesis, and here too they reached the Cup on their first try. A group stage exit there, and in 3 of the 6 subsequent editions, also saw them winning the 1968 and 1974 African Nations Cup, as well as finishing 4th in the 18 tournament in 1972. They beat Ghana in the final in 1968 and played to a 1-1 draw in the final with Zambia in 1974. Both teams scored in extra time, which forced them into a replay 2 days later, which they won 2-0. As in World Cup play, they crumbled in disarray after 1974 until emerging into an extended strong period from 1992 until 2006, reaching the Cup every time and passing the group stage 6 of the 8 times. It peaked in 1998 with a 3rd place finish. A slump then followed, 3 non-qualifications in a row, but they returned to regular participation in 2013, passing the group stage 3 of the next 4 times and taking 3rd place again in 2015. In 2021, though, they failed to qualify for the Cup, recently expanded to 24 teams, finishing behind Gambia and Gabon in their qualifying group. We'll have a closer look then at their 2023 and 2025 qualifications.
Okay, that will come in the recent history soon. But before we do that, we'll just kind of summarize the strength of Congo DR. And a bit like Senegal, it kind of comes in waves. But their first African Cup entry, I'm in the wrong spot here. We're not talking about the African Cup. We're talking about their strength where they emerged as a top-tier team in 1965 and remained so for the next 10 years. In their first attempt, they became the first sub-Saharan African team to reach the World Cup in 1974 there. They never again reached those heights, but were for the most part a solid second-tier team from the 1990s onwards. This was more so in African Cup play where, apart from a slump around 2010, they have generally passed the group stage and, as we saw, finished 3rd in 1998 and in 2015. Only recently has their World Cup form caught up to that. Second tier could mean coming close to the World Cup, but only a good campaign in 2006 actually did that. But 2018 kind of returned them to that level of competitiveness. So we'll see how they did in campaigns after that. Let's go to their 2022 World Cup campaign.
Yeah, so Congo DR received a bye in round 1 of 3, a preliminary round. They were the weakest of the Pot 1 teams and faced a competitive campaign, which got off to a slow start with a home draw against Pot 4 team Tanzania. They tied their next game in Benin and later lost in Madagascar. But it was their only loss, and they won the others, moving up from 3rd place after 4 games to finish 1st in round 2 of 3. However, they were no match for Morocco in the final playoff round, tying at home but losing by a 3-goal margin away.
All right. Well, considering they were a pot one team in round 2 of 3 there, the competition wasn't that stiff.
No, a bit surprising that they kind of struggled. And I guess it kind of came home to roost when they faced a legit pot one team in Morocco in the playoff.
Yeah, well put. But it is interesting to see Benin just a point behind them there, even though Congo DR bested them in the head-to-head.
Yeah, that's right. They'll meet again.
Yes. Okay, let's move on to the African Cup 2023 campaign.
Yeah, so they had a poor start in qualifying, losing to Gabon at home and Sudan, but they won their next four, even if the win in second place Mauritania was awarded after an initial draw, and they finished first in the qualifying group. In the cup, they tied all three group stage games. That was against Zambia, Morocco, and Tanzania. But they performed well, finishing second in the group stage nonetheless. They beat Egypt on penalties and then Guinea to reach the semifinal, where they were very flat in their loss to host Ivory Coast. And then they lost in penalties to South Africa to finish fourth.
Yeah, fourth place finish, a good result there. The only really great result there was the win on penalties over Egypt. 8-7 with the shots there.
Wow, high scoring. Yeah, that's a very impressive result. And yeah, getting to the semifinals is good. It's a very interesting how the group stage figured out. I mean, tying three games rarely puts you second in a group, but the bottom two also tied. So it's kind of a point pattern that doesn't occur all that often. And yeah, essentially they tied Egypt as well. So they tied their first four games, only winning one, but coming away with fourth place.
Yeah, well, that's if that's all that matters, then fourth place is something to be happy about.
You bet.
All right, let's take a look at that qualifying campaign for this cup.
So here, Congo started excellently, winning their first four games and securing advancement, but then losing the last two to Guinea and shockingly pot four Ethiopia at home. But they nevertheless finished first in the group stage.
Yeah, there we go. So simple as that. Here they are in the cup. And let's go to the scorers. Who do you think was their top scorer? They only got 7 goals there.
I'm going to guess Johan Wissa.
Yeah, well done. Only 2 of the goals, though, but he was their top scorer with those 2 goals. So 5 other scorers. Big names there, Michak, Ilya, and Chancel and Mbemba. And Connor, I've recently learned that Aaron Wan-Bissaka has joined Congo DR for their fall games there, the World Cup qualifiers.
Oh, that's good. Good for them. I mean, they've got, I think, a couple players with Sunderland and Burnley, so they kind of have guys playing in the Premier League, which can only be good for them.
Yeah. Actually, I think one of their top scorers is Cedric McCambu, but the only thing he did in this campaign was miss a penalty.
Oh, well, hopefully his luck will change.
Okay, let's go on to that World Cup 2026 qualifying game. This is in the fall of 2025, so very recent here.
Yeah, and we already saw them in passing because they were in the same group as Senegal.
Oh, yes.
Senegal bested Congo DR with a win and a tie. And that ultimately condemned Congo to finishing second in the group stage behind them. They otherwise dropped points only in a loss to Sudan. But that solid record had them finishing second among the ranking of second place finishers. And that leads into a playoff round, which will be decided shortly. So Congo DR still with a chance of reaching the World Cup, though the path ahead is a difficult one.
Great. Yeah, it definitely is. What do you think of their chances of winning the playoff? They are facing Cameroon.
I think it's winnable. Then they'll play the winner of either Gabon or Nigeria. I kind of see Congo DR, and maybe you agree, as a team that can kind of surge hot, but can also go a little bit cold. We've seen that in even the African Cup qualifying with 4 wins, but then also 2 defeats, some of them surprising. So, yeah, I think it's a playoff. It's possible they get through. The winner of that 4-team African group still has to go to an intercontinental phase. So they have a lot of games to play, even if they do win this. So, just on those odds, I guess it's unlikely, but I don't say their odds are much worse than any of the African teams they're facing.
Yeah, I would say I would actually maybe even give Congo DR an edge over Cameroon, but I think they would have a tough time passing Nigeria. And then, as you say, they would have an intercontinental playoff beyond that. So very much a tough road ahead. I think actually when we were looking at the scorers for the 2025 qualification, I was actually looking at the scorers for a different tournament there, or I was looking at the scorers. Anyway, let's look at the scorers for this one. They did score more goals here, 15 goals. And would you predict Wissa again?
Yeah, Wissa again, I imagine would be up there. And Bakambu was a name I'd forgotten, but he's been a big player for them.
Yeah, and Bakambu came through this time with four of their goals. Johan Wissa and Theo Bongonda, 2 of their goals. We're just throwing out some of these names just to prepare you a little bit for some of the players that you'll see. Any other players that you want to mention?
Yeah, those would be the main ones. I mean, I mentioned Sunderland. They have Noah Siddiqui and Arthur Masuaku. Tuanzebe's the Burnley players. So they got some good players kind of in different positions. And players playing in general in the top flight in England and Spain and France. So they've got their players are on pretty good clubs overall.
Yeah, very good quality on the team. And I find them a fun team to watch in the cups as well. But let us not linger. Let's move on to our third team here. So we're going to take a look at maybe a team that a lot of people don't know as well as they might know the first two. We're looking at Benin here.
Yeah, so Benin or Benin, I'm not exactly sure.
I checked it out. It's Benin.
Okay, well, there we go. All that to say, they were known as Dahomey until 1977. But Benin first entered the World Cup in 1974, but participation was scattered over the next few tournaments. By 1998, they had entered only 3 of the 7 tournaments, but from 2002, their participation has been consistent. African Cup play is a similar story, first entering in 1972, but completing only 4 of 10 qualifications to 1990. They withdrew again in 1996, but did not miss from 1998 onwards. I'll mention their local group here, which is WAFU, the West African Football Union. There have only been 5 editions from the first completed WAFU Cup in 2010, and they didn't enter in 2011 and 2015. So just showing, again, a bit of scattered participation.
Right, and that one more recent. Yes, in terms of achievement, Benin has never reached the World Cup. They reached the final round of qualifying in 2006 and 2010, and 2010 was their best performance, coming second and just 3 points behind Ghana, who took the advancing spot there. They have qualified for the African Cup 4 times, and that includes twice in a row in 2008 and 2010. They had never passed the group stage until their most recent entry in 2019, where they even went past the round of 16, knocking out Morocco, if you will, to reach the quarterfinals.
Wow, what a great showing.
Yeah. And we will be taking a closer look at that when we get to the African Cup. But let's first look at their World Cup in more detail.
Yeah, so as you said, they've never qualified. But we'll look at their attempts. So Benin were knocked out in a first-round pairing in 3 of their first 4 qualifying campaigns. 1994 was the only group qualification, but they managed only a single win over the 6th game of the campaign, sharing home wins with Ethiopia. In fairness, apart from Ethiopia, the strong teams they faced in all of those campaigns gave them little chance, and they did well in a close preliminary with Senegal in 2002. 2006 was a bit better, but they still finished last in the 6-team group behind Libya and Sudan. They first made an impression with a very good campaign in 2010, winning the first group stage over teams of similar strength, and then placing second ahead of Mali in round 2. 2014 was also a respectable battle with Mali, finishing tied on points but behind them, though both were far behind Algeria. 2018 was reminiscent of early campaigns, paired with a stronger team in a knockout round, that being Burkina Faso, and they had a quick exit, but we'll look more closely at the 2 recent campaigns.
All right, well, World Cup, not much to really talk about there because they've never reached it, but they have reached the African Cup. So let's take a look at their African Cup history.
Yeah, so participation was patchy in their early African Cup history and weak until 2004, where they measured success only with some impressive home results at the game level. They were never close to the campaign level until reaching the Cup with an impressive campaign in 2004. To put it into perspective, they had been through group qualifications in 3 editions in the 1990s. In 2 of them, they earned just 2 home draws, and in 1, they lost all games, and they finished bottom of the group every time. In 2004, however, they won all the games at home, finishing in first over Zambia with a 4-1-1 record. In the Cup, though, they proved no match, losing all 3 games. They missed the next Cup, but qualified in both 2008 and 2010, making it their best period. They again proved out of their depth once there, earning just a single draw with Mozambique over the 2 campaigns. The following 3 campaigns were poor, but campaigns from 2017 were more competitive and earned them a 4th African Cup appearance in 2019. There, they tied all group stage games to finish 3rd behind Ghana and Cameroon, but that saw them through, and in the round of 16, they earned their most glorious result, a win on penalties over Morocco. And we'll look at future campaigns right away.
Okay, yes, that was a heck of a good way to for the 2019 Cup there. In 2021, though, kind of went back to finishing 3rd of 4 in qualifying. So that's actually the tournament we're going in off. But we'll jump back to World Cup here and see how they did in the World Cup 2022 performance.
Yeah, so they received a bye in the preliminary round. So in the group stage, they got off to a good start with road wins against Madagascar and Tanzania, sandwiching a home draw against top-seeded Congo DR. But a home loss to Tanzania ultimately cost them. They were in first place going into the last game, but a loss to Congo DR where they were leapfrogged, and so they had to settle for a 2nd place finish in round 2 of 3, but that was not an advancing spot to the playoffs. So it was Congo DR who took that spot, and we saw they lost to Morocco.
Right, we've seen that table before. So just 1 point behind Congo DR, but not good enough to get to the next round. And we'll take a look at the African Cup in 2023.
Yeah, so in qualifying, they finished a disappointing 3rd in the group stage. Their only away win in Rwanda was actually a draw that was later awarded to them. They tied them in the home leg as well as an already advancing Senegal, but lost both legs to Mozambique. So, yeah, a disappointing 3rd behind Senegal. So another recent campaign, though, where they meet one of their present group mates.
Right, and they did tie Senegal at home there, but yeah, overall a pretty disappointing thing. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Benin's players, but any guess on the top scorer there?
I was looking at their squad, and the name that stood out to me was Steve Mounier, once in the Premier League with Huddersfield. So I guess he would have to be my guess.
Well done. He did 2 of their 8 goals there, of course. Well, their top scorer was goals awarded. 3 of their goals coming from that. But Steve Mooney, yeah, with 2 goals, including a late goal against Rwanda there. All right, on to their qualifying for this Cup, African Cup 2025 qualifying. How did they get here this time?
Yeah, so Benin was undefeated at home. They dropped points only in a draw with group winner Nigeria. That was at home. but they earned only 1 point on the road in a tie with Libya. So they finished second in the group, in the qualifying group, narrowly ahead of Rwanda. They were actually tied on points, so they were ahead of them on goal difference, but behind Nigeria, who were the group winners.
Yes, so there we have it. And top scorer there, Steve Mooney again, but still only with 2 of their 7 goals. And I'm not really familiar with the other players. Andreas Hutunji, maybe a name to look out for there. He also got 2 goals. On to 2026 World Cup qualifying.
Yeah, so Benin came into this as a pot 3 team, and it saw them finish 3rd in the qualifying group. They actually went into the last game in 1st place in the qualifying group, but unfortunately for them, they lost 4-0 away to Nigeria, who had a poor campaign, but leapfrogged Benin right at the end. They traded home wins with Nigeria, but were beaten twice by group winner South Africa, so those games proved crucial. They otherwise lost points only in away draws with Lesotho and Zimbabwe. I have to say this was the most entertaining and competitive World Cup qualifying group, and Benin certainly played their part. Just 1 point behind group winners South Africa, even though they were 3rd. And as we said, leapfrog with Nigeria in the final game. So bit of agony for them that they couldn't quite get over the line.
Yeah. I mean, part of the reason it was exciting was because Nigeria was doing so poorly. I think they were at 5th place in the group close to the end there. But we see Nigeria there do have the kind of the power to turn it on, and that's exactly what they did.
Yeah, South Africa was also further ahead before being docked points, so that kind of opened a door right at the end for Benin as well.
Yeah, a lot of drama in this group for sure. Okay, well, for scorers, we have Steve Mooney. This time he got 5 of their 12 goals, so almost half of them. And maybe a couple of other names to throw out. I don't know if you're familiar with them. Dodu Doku and Jodel Dosu.
Yeah, not names I know, but Mounier seems to be the main threat, being their leading goal scorer in each of the last few campaigns.
Yeah, and probably their most familiar player, but maybe in this African Cup we'll get to know a couple of more names, because for these African teams, a lot of times it is about exposure, international exposure for their players. Okay, and we're going to move on to a team that doesn't have much international exposure, Botswana. And let's begin with a broad overview. It's all red there in the graphic, even if you can't read the actual words. But red basically means didn't qualify, blue means reached the group stage, and green means went beyond the group stage. So looking quite red here.
Yeah, well, and part of that is they have a short history. Botswana first entered qualifications in 1994. That was for both the World Cup and African Cups, though they have participated steadily in all competitions, with the exception of not entering the 1998 World Cup.
Right, so their participation is straightforward and pretty steady, and their achievements also fairly straightforward. They've never come close to reaching the World Cup, and did reach the African Cup in 2012, where they were knocked out at the group stage. So this one makes their second African Cup appearance here in 2025. Well, that section was short. Let's move on to their World Cup overview.
Yeah, we'll go into more detail here. So Botswana tied Ivory Coast at home in their first campaign in 1994. But subsequent campaigns would show that to be one of their best results in qualifying, since any success they've had can only be measured at the game level. Generally, they've been involved in group rounds, passing preliminaries over weak teams when they've had to play them. As a result, they have had 3rd or 4th tier teams to take a few points off in almost every campaign, but they finish in the bottom half of the table invariably. 2010 was their best campaign, going undefeated in their first 3 games, which included another tie with Ivory Coast, and holding first place halfway through the campaign. But they ended up finishing last in the group, even worse than their typical second from last finish. 2022 was a poor campaign. We'll see that in more detail as they were knocked out in a preliminary round, and we'll look at that and 2026 in closer detail in our recent history section.
Right. Okay. Nicely done there. And we'll move on to the African Cup history, which has a bit more detail to offer than the World Cup history.
Yeah, so contrary to World Cup qualifying, 4 of their first 5 African Cup campaigns saw them both playing a preliminary round and getting knocked out there. Their record begins with a shameful exit at the hands of feeble Lesotho, a team they would best in 2006 World Cup qualifying. Their other pairings were manageable, and they were undefeated at home against them, but they were always knocked out in the second game of the set. In 1998, it was Namibia, a team they had tied twice for their only points in the 1996 10-game group qualification, but after tying them at home, they lost 6-0 in the away leg. Mozambique and Madagascar were the others, and they fell to the latter despite beating them in the first leg. So those preliminary rounds, a bit of a hurdle for Botswana in the early years. But group rounds were the norm then from 2004 to 2012. They earned some points, but they finished last in the group, even in 2008 when they earned 2 wins and a draw at home. It was thus an utter surprise when, in 2012, they finished first in the group, beating Tunisia twice and finishing ahead of them, 2 ties with Malawi and a loss in the last game to Togo, the only points dropped. In the Cup, they lost by only a goal to Ghana and Mali, but they suffered a 6-1 loss at the hands of Guinea. They did not maintain their form, though, and went back to typical campaigns of earning a few points, but finishing bottom or second last. They did take scalps, though, in 2015, when they earned just a single point, but it was a tie with Tunisia. And that was the case in 2019 also. Burkina Faso, the victim, a team they beat in a slightly better 2017 campaign. 2021 saw them victimize pot to Zambia. So some game level results there to be proud of.
Yeah, and that maybe will factor into our discussion at the end there. I'll just finish here with a summary of their overall strength. So in terms of strength, we're going to get to know the character of a 4th tier team here. It's different than a 5th tier team, which is basically feeble, but a 4th tier team generally doesn't approach the World Cup. And in order to reach an African Cup, they need to raise their performance level. So it's possible for that kind of 4th tier team to reach a cup if they have an exceptional year. And Botswana have done that in 2012 and in reaching this cup as well. So as we've seen, they generally earn a few points in their campaigns, mostly by being competitive with other 4th tier teams or perhaps a 3rd tier team. But throughout their history, and this is an interesting point, they have stolen a point or more at the game level by taking a scalp of a second or even more often a top tier team. So it only ever amounted to campaign level success in 2012, where they beat Tunisia twice. But otherwise, despite getting that kind of spoiler result, it's a bottom half of the table finish invariably, and usually though second last a bit more often than in last place. Okay, so let's go and look at the recent history there. We're taking a look at their World Cup performance in 2022.
Yeah, so they were among the bottom 28 ranked teams required to play in round 1 of 3, effectively a knockout round. Their FIFA ranking was 147th, and they were paired with Malawi, ranked ahead of them at 126. The first leg at home was a goalless draw, and they lost by a single goal, a penalty in the 81st minute in the second leg, to be eliminated in the preliminary knockout round.
Yeah, so I think that's their first knockout round elimination since 2002 or so.
Yeah, short campaign. Kind of a shame that your whole World Cup campaign ends in 2 games, but that is the case for the weaker teams.
Or maybe mixing that up with African Cup. I think it's in the African Cup they've mostly had group rounds. But anyway, let's look at the African Cup performance in 2023.
Yeah, so they did not have to play a preliminary round here, but that was only reserved for the 12 weakest teams. They were one of the 12 weakest teams. Pardon me. But they automatically advanced when their opponents Eritrea withdrew, so they didn't really have to play it.
Yeah.
In the group stage, they finished third of four in qualifying, 9 points behind second place Equatorial Guinea, whom they lost to twice. They tied group winner Tunisia at home and then beat last place Libya, but lost all their matches on the road.
Yeah, so this is a really typical performance, a couple of good performances at home. There's Tunisia once again being victimized as their kind of scalp performance, and a smattering of points and a second last place finish. That's very typical of a lot of their campaigns.
Great.
But obviously they improved upon that for this qualifying campaign because they reached the cup. How did they do that?
Well, it was difficult as they came in as a four-seeded team in a 14 group, and they started poorly too, losing their first two games, including a heavy home loss to group winner Egypt. But they then beat the Cape Verde Islands twice and tied their last two, including in Egypt, to finish second in their qualifying group. So I guess you can only call that a stunning turnaround. And yeah, well done on them to finish with a record of 2 wins, 2 draws, 2 losses, but 8 points enough here.
Yeah, I mean the last half of that campaign looking a bit like their 2012 campaign, and Cape Verde is no slouch. They reached the World Cup in 2026, so this was an awful campaign for them, but they're a pretty good team to be beating twice.
Yeah, a bit notable actually that Cape Verde is not at this African Cup. You might have over recent tournaments got used to expecting to see them here, but Botswana is the reason for that. And actually a tough group. Mauritania have also been at recent African Cups, and then Egypt. So a daunting group, but really good results.
Yeah, very much. So they definitely would be expected to finish last there. In terms of scores, though, they only got 3 goals, and they were each scored by 3 different players. So no one really standing out in terms of scorers to watch out for. So let's move on to their 2026 World Cup qualifying campaign.
Yeah, so Botswana here came in as a pot 5 team out of 6, but they finished 5th in the qualifying group, so perhaps as predicted. They bested Guinea, but finished 5 points behind them. And their only other points were 2 wins over pot 6, Somalia. So that had them losing both home and away to Mozambique, Uganda, and group winners Algeria.
Yes, okay. So again, a pretty typical performance. Maybe we could call Guinea the scalp team there, because Guinea is actually the pot 2 team there. And,
if you give Guinea the 4 points that that Botswana took from them, it puts Guinea into a strong qualifying spot. So yeah, I would consider that a scalp for sure.
Yeah, and then they'd be expected to beat Somalia there. So again, a typical performance and a typical finish, second from the bottom. They got 12 goals over the campaign, but again, no one really outstanding because their top scorer only had 2 goals. So a wide variety of players, but I can't really pick out anyone to highlight to keep an eye on there.
No. And just kind of interesting on their players, almost all of them play domestically in the local Botswana league.
Okay.
A couple that play elsewhere in Africa, but yeah, that's where a lot of them play.
No really big names. No. But then, again, what I said after Benin, then reaching the cup is a pretty big deal to them because it might give them exposure that they couldn't otherwise get.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that brings us to the end of part 2, our look at the teams. And so now we're going to kind of look at them in comparison to each other. And we start with the pots that they were drawn from.
Yeah, so the pot 1 team here is Senegal. They're the highest ranked pot 1 team other than the hosts, Morocco. I think Morocco is ranked higher than them, so they come in basically as a second ranked team overall in Africa.
Uh-huh.
Pot 2 team Congo DR is actually 5th out of the 6 teams there. The pot 3 team Benin is again the 6th out of 6 pot 3 teams, so you could say they're kind of on the verge of pot 3 or 4, at least using that ranking. And Botswana is the lowest ranked team in this tournament, the last team out of pot 4. So Senegal near the top of their pots, but the other 3 coming near the bottom. And I guess we'll talk about rankings next, and we'll see how that plays out in terms of world rankings as well.
Yeah, that does suggest a pretty wide divide between Senegal and Congo DR. So we'll be talking about whether we think it is that wide. But those are based on rankings. So we'll just take a look at their rankings now. The pot's based on FIFA rankings, I should say.
Yeah, so Senegal is currently 18th in FIFA and 24th in ELO. And it should be said that they've been basically a top 20 team in the world for going on 6 years now. We saw them win a recent African Cup and perform well there and get to World Cup. So, for Senegal, consistently a strong team in Africa.
Yeah, not so much in ELO rankings. We have them more around 30. But nevertheless, well ahead of Congo DR there.
Yeah, they are 60th in FIFA and 65th in ELO, and that's been fairly typical for them over the last 5 years. Maybe a little bit of a rise, but not sharply, even with that good kind of World Cup qualifying campaign that they just finished.
Yeah, their weak period was more around 2010. 2010 to 15. So yeah, they've been pretty consistent over the last 10 years.
Yeah. Next is Benin. They're 92nd in FIFA and 89th in ELO. And again, they've kind of been around that mark for a while. They're typically lower in ELO, actually. They were below 100 while they were above 100 in the FIFA rankings. But their ELO ranking has gone up from 121st in December 2023 to 89th. So that's a pretty good rise in that system.
Yeah, it doesn't really match our narrative. We've seen them as a fairly consistent, I'd say, strong third-tier team for a while. So I don't really get that variation in the ELO rankings there. But definitely, again, as you said in your opening question, a wide divide between the places here among all teams. Yeah.
If I did want to support our narrative, I'd say their ELO ranking is the exact same as it was in December 2020. So a bit of fluctuation, but long-term, a bit of consistency.
Yeah, that's true. All right, and then Botswana then, take us through that.
Yeah, so they're 137th in FIFA and 133rd in ELO. A slight rise in the FIFA ranking, but actually a slight drop in ELO now sees them kind of ranked about the same in both systems. Something that can be said actually for all 4 of the teams in this group.
I mean, really, first tier, second tier, third tier, fourth tier. It couldn't be laid out much more clearly. But we'll see if there is anything that makes us a bit skeptical about those rankings, and maybe something in the head-to-head. Will, let's begin with that and look at the teams' records with each other.
Yeah, so the top 2, Senegal and Congo DR, Senegal have the better record, but they don't have it all their own way. It's 4 wins, 3 draws, and 1 defeat from 8 previous meetings.
Yeah, so 3 draws is a bit suggestive there. And they last met in 2026 World Cup qualifying, where we saw that Congo DR not only tied them, but tied them in Senegal. And but were bested by them in the end. Prior to that, 2012 was their last meeting, so the World Cup qualifying their only recent meeting.
Yeah.
Next go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say what you were going to say, introduce Senegal versus Benin.
Yeah.
And again, Senegal dominant, but not always in terms of wins. It's 3 wins, 2 draws, and no defeats for Senegal. So Benin yet to get the better of them.
Yeah, but we did see Benin get a tie against Senegal in 2023 African Cup qualifying there, albeit after Senegal had secured qualifications. So I'm not sure what to make of it there. They also actually met in 2019 African Cup quarterfinal, which we talked about. That was Benin's best performance ever, and it was Senegal who brought it to an end.
Right.
Okay. Moving on.
All right. So Senegal versus Botswana. They've met just twice, but both of those were shutout wins for Senegal.
Right. And those were in the 2015 African Cup qualifying. On we go to Congo DR against Benin.
Yeah. Again, not a big sample size, but it's a win and a draw for Congo DR. Benin yet to win.
Yes, but it is fairly recent, 2022 World Cup qualifying there. So we do see Benin taking some points there in a draw. And Congo DR versus Botswana.
Again, a small sample size of just 2 games and a win and a draw for DR Congo here as well.
Yeah, that was in 2004, and yet another of Botswana's scalps. Taking points off a stronger team. And finally, we have the 2 bottom teams, Benin and Botswana.
Yeah, and they actually have yet to play each other, so history will be made in this tournament.
Right. Okay. Well, that pretty much went according to expectation. And now I'm looking at the expectations of I would say odds makers, but actually, I asked the AI to give this, and I have to prompt the AI to think deeper about it because they don't give a good answer first time around. Do you want to take us through the odds there?
Yeah, so the odds to win this group, see Senegal at 55%, Congo DR at 30%, Benin 10%, and Botswana 5%. So again, sticking pretty closely with that first, second, third, fourth tier narrative.
Yeah, and that narrative is pretty consistent throughout. So I guess I'll begin the discussion by saying, or is this too broad? Do you see any possibility of surprise here yourself?
Yeah, I do. And I see it probably primarily in the middle. I think, Benin can be a good team. I think they've had good performances, and when they haven't made the cup or they've gone out in a qualifying round, it's been narrow, as we saw with the World Cup and in the African Cup as well. So I think Benin has generally done enough to convince me that they can compete with good teams. We know in the African Cup there's always surprises. Sometimes the groups that look the most straightforward cease to be. So I think Benin do have a chance of maybe upsetting things in this group. More at Congo DR's expense, I see it. But curious if you see it the same way or whether you think it's as straightforward as it appears.
In as far as Benin, certainly if they put in a performance like 2019, where they tied Ghana and Cameroon in the group stage and beat Morocco in the knockout stage, but that's the only time Benin has ever really done anything like that. So I don't actually agree with you there. I see the biggest possibility of a turnaround from the order here as Congo DR maybe getting the better of Senegal, but even that I would call unlikely.
Yeah. Maybe just to jump straight to the bottom of the pile, Botswana competing in their their second ever African Cup, but their first in over a decade. Do you think they can have an impact here to maybe change the order, at least impact the order of this group?
I mean, they did well to get here, and even in 2012, after a tremendous qualifying campaign, they proved, I wouldn't say weak in the cup. Two of the games were 1-goal margins, and in the other one they got trounced. I think the biggest thing in Botswana's favor is they do tend to take a scalp in almost like a lot of their qualifying campaigns. They take points off a second tier or top tier team. So I think there's a possibility of them playing a spoiler, and I think in this group a spoiler could upset things quite a bit. But that's as much as I can. That's as much as I can. Like realistically predict Botswana getting. I mean, we've done enough of these tournaments to know that anything can happen in any given group, right? Botswana could end up on top, and we just kind of shrug our shoulders. But you can't kind of predict those things. I mean, all we can really talk about here is what we think is likely to happen. So, there's always a chance that Botswana could surprise, but I don't really see it happening here.
No, I don't really see it here either. I think kind of their World Cup campaign, finishing 5th out of 6 and really only bettering Somalia, shows that they did well to reach her, but I think they've already come back down to earth a little bit.
Yeah.
It's a tough group for them. I don't really see them getting a point, which, as we sometimes have to talk about, could be good for the other 3 teams. They could all advance if Botswana, fail to take a point off any of them. But yeah, I think Senegal are the strongest team in the group by far. I mean, we look at their pot rankings and world rankings, and they're quite a bit ahead of even the second team, Congo DR. Interestingly, last tournament, they won all 3 games in the group stage. You said they were the only team to do so, but then went out in the first knockout round. We've talked before about, does a team peak too early? Some of the teams that win maybe don't get off to the best start, but save it. So maybe you could say that happened to Senegal. I don't think they would, want to lose a game intentionally, but there might be something to be said for maybe them not getting off to the same start, and maybe doing okay in the tournament otherwise. So, on paper, I think definitely the strongest team here, and they could go far in the tournament, but I'm not sure they're going to run over the group as they've done last time.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely something to be said for teams overheating in the group stage, and I know Brazil is well aware of that. But I don't really think you can do anything to engineer not overheating. As you said, you're not going to start losing games on purpose or fielding a B team or something like that. So I'm not really sure what can be done about it. But I gotta say, I'm a bit surprised you're not seeing Congo DR a bit more closer. I guess Senegal won all their group stage games last time, and Congo DR tied all of theirs and finished 3rd. But Congo DR did end up finishing 4th in the group stage, which was better than Senegal. But more to the point, like in 2026 qualifying, Congo DR was really on the heels of Senegal, or actually ahead of them in for most of the campaign, and that was a pretty close campaign. So you don't see them being close here.
I think they definitely could be. I mean, they've expended a lot of energy in that campaign, and will go through a playoff now, which could end in disappointment if they fail to win the kind of mini tournament with Nigeria, Cameroon, and Gabon. I definitely think they're a strong team that's kind of has shown a recent upswing. But I don't know. I think the last tournament they maybe failed to deceive a bit with all those draws and getting as far as they did.
Yeah,
they have good players. They're attracting good players. They're the biggest country by far. But I don't know if I'm convinced of their consistency, and they have dropped points in games maybe they shouldn't have. So I see them as vulnerable. maybe not, again, a very difficult thing to predict, but potentially vulnerable. And I think Benin are probably a bit stronger than, their ranking in the pot shows and maybe their world rankings, just because they've been close a lot of times and they've ran well with big teams, including Nigeria, in a couple campaigns who
Yeah.
they've done well. So I think Benin certainly has it in them. I think it would be a mistake to see Benin kind of drastically below Congo DR.
All right. I think you don't think Aaron Wan-Bissaka is going to make all the difference then?
Perhaps if he can stop Steve Mounier, that'll be the big question. No, I think it's
Okay.
just maybe a point of disagreement, but I see Benin as a threat here. I could see them finishing with 4 points, maybe a tie off Congo DR, and
Yeah.
potentially getting ahead of them. But do you
Well,
think
there've been many times when we've looked back on these media casts that we do a kind of slap in my head about, oh my God, like we were so wrong,
yeah,
but you can never really predict. You made a point about consistency there, and I think definitely Senegal is more consistent, and it might come down to that. If Botswana is a team that steals a point from a top team, it's more likely to be Congo DR. In fact, I think they did take points off of Congo DR before, then it's going to be off of Senegal. Let's talk about the overall expectation. Like, how far do you think Senegal will go? What do you think they'll be happy with or disappointed with?
yeah. I mean, I see the host Morocco as the team to beat, the toughest team in the tournament. But I probably put Senegal second. Consistency in qualification, general consistency in the tournament. Last tournament decide where they went out to Ivory Coast, but they won the tournament before in 2021. So I think Senegal is really at the peak of their powers. They're getting to World Cups consistently. I think their ambition will be to win it, and I think getting to the final would be a good campaign for them. Probably nothing less. So, and I don't see there any potential fallibility at the group stage really costing them in the long run.
No, I'm thinking that, like, even if Senegal did finish second in the group stage and, your overheating argument, they went through in second and gained momentum and stuff, I think they would do much better, in the round of 16 against a tougher team than Congo DR would do. So it probably wouldn't affect their campaign to finish second in the group at all.
I think you make a good point there. I don't think anyone's going to want to play Senegal. Senegal will go into most games as the favorites. That's probably the bigger weight for them is managing kind of that favorites tag.
Yeah.
I think Congo DR and Benin ultimately will both get out of the group, in second and third. So maybe my argument about who finishes ahead of who is a little bit academic. But if they both get 4 points, for example, or even one of them gets 3, they're probably both through.
And I think that's quite likely, given Botswana. They'll, I'll say it, I think they're almost a guaranteed 3 points against Botswana.
You mentioned their scalps, but a lot of those have come at home, and they're playing very far away from home. So I think they're really up against it here. Congo DR, again, got to the final 4 of the last tournament, so I think they'd want to do that again. They did have a pretty good World Cup campaign despite finishing second. And I think Benin, if they get out of the group, probably getting to the quarterfinals would be as good as they could expect. If they go through in third place in the group, they're probably going to have a difficult tie, and that may mean they go out in the round of 16. But so I guess I see different levels of achievement being considered satisfactory for each of the teams.
Yeah, I'm not far off what you say. I think, Congo DR realistically will finish second, which means a bit of a tougher opponent in the next round. So I think they would do well to get to the quarterfinals. I think matching their 4th place finish last time may be a bit too ambitious this time. Mind you, they did finish 3rd in the group last time and made it that far.
Yeah, I mean, I should point out that they come in as basically the 11th ranked African team in this tournament. So in that
Yeah,
stage, even getting to the final 8 might be considered a good tournament.
yeah.
But um,
I think it would be a quarterfinal finish would be pretty good. I think for Benin, reaching around to 16 would be a very good finish, even if it is with in third place here. And I agree with you that it's kind of set up. They should take 3 points off Morocco. They are not really expected to take points off the top teams, but 3 points can get you through.
yeah, 3 points off Botswana. I think if their only win in this tournament was against Botswana, they would go home feeling like they failed to achieve something.
Yeah.
But yeah, a good result in the group stage and perhaps a good result in round of 16 would be good. And I think, my theory about Benin challenging Congo DR will be put to the test right away because they meet each other in their first game of the tournament.
Yeah, well, that will be a kind of a deciding game. If things go as we expect, that would probably be the deciding game for second place there.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, Benin meet Senegal in the third round, and Senegal may be fielding a B team for that game.
And if Senegal do beat Congo DR could go into the last game with a bit of pressure, with a bit of ground to make up.
Yeah.
I think it probably works again in Benin's favor that they play Botswana, hopefully get their points in the bag, maybe even know they're qualified before going into their match against Senegal with maybe a bit less pressure.
Yeah. Great. Well, I think we've broken it down a lot, except that I notice you're really kind of hesitating to really commit. If you're going to put Benin second, say it now.
I say it. I'm going to say Senegal first, Benin second, Congo DR third, and Botswana fourth. I guess if Benin finish third as expected, you can ignore me. But if they do better, you heard it here first.
Ridiculous. I'm going to go Senegal, Congo, well, pot order, Senegal, Congo DR, Benin, and Botswana. But I do think Benin will advance in third place and reach the round of 16, which I think they'd be satisfied with as a result. So what is it? 4 out of the 6 groups will have a third place team going through.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think this will be one of the group where it happens. And we'll just finish with this question then. Senegal, Morocco in the final. Who do you think will win if it comes to that?
Oh, that would be a great final. I mean, I think with Morocco at home, I would kind of always be inclined to give Morocco the edge, but Senegal just have so much talent. It would be, I know they have an African Cup with this team, but it would really be kind of glorious. It would kind of cement a golden generation if they could achieve another success, and perhaps well deserved.
Yeah, they did win it in 2021. Maybe a knockout in the round of 16 last time will be a disappointment that will spur them in this cup. All right, well, that's it for our look at Group D, and so we will see you next time for Group E.
All right, see you then.
We would like to thank Pixabay and Cold Fingers for the wonderful music used in this mediacast. The title of the piece is Eid Mubarak.